I'm Patricia, and this is Investigating Vegan Life with Patricia Kathleen. This series features interviews and conversations I conduct with experts from food and fashion to tech and agriculture, from medicine and science to health and humanitarian arenas. Our inquiry is an effort to examine the variety of industries and lifestyle tenets in the world of vegan life. To that end, we will cover topics that have revealed themselves as common and integral when exploring veganism. The dialogue captured here is part of our ongoing effort to host transparent and honest rhetoric for those of you who, like myself, find great value in hearing the expertise and opinions of individuals who have dedicated their work and lives to their ideals. You can find information about myself and my podcast at patriciakathleen.com. Welcome to Investigating Vegan Life. Now let's start the conversation. Hi everyone, and welcome back. I am your host, Patricia, and today I am elated to be sitting down with Katrina Fox. Katrina is a journalist, author, founder, and PR consultant. You can find out more about her services as well as everything we talk about in today's podcast at www.katrinafox.com, as well as www.veganbusinessmedia.com. Welcome, Katrina.
Hello, Patricia. It's a pleasure to be with you today, all the way across the pond.
Yeah, Katrina.
Yeah.
Earlier today. I'm excited we could make our schedules work as well. I look forward to diving into everything that you're doing. We were just talking off the air that Katrina is kind of based her consultancy in an industry that I think is going to blow up and is already blowing up, but perhaps even more so. For those of you that are new to the podcast, I will give you a brief bio on Katrina before I ask her to further elaborate on that and her history and then get into some of her current endeavors. But before we get to that, a quick roadmap for today's podcast. We will look, as I said, at some of Katrina's past histories, professional, academic, anything that ties into her current story as it pertains to what she's doing now. I'll also ask her to unpack her personal vegan journey as it pertains to all of the areas that we'll be talking about today. And then we'll look at unpacking Katrina's work in three different sectors. Namely, we'll look at her podcast, her book, and her online courses. And we'll see if we can kind of suss out her ethos and business philosophies as they stand within that. Before we do those three things, however, we will also ask Katrina to kind of decipher and self-define key terms that tend to create heated debate and topic within the vegan world and community. We'll climb upon those, just asking for some personal definitions so we all have clarity as to how we're defining things. And we'll wrap all of the podcast up with advice for those of you that are looking to get involved with Katrina, as well as maybe some of the predictions that she has for the next 5 or so years on the horizon. Things have changed greatly, the world landscape with the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is an area that's changed a lot for people when they go to look forward. As promised, before I start peppering her with questions, a quick bio. Katrina Fox is an award-winning journalist, publicity consultant, editor of the vegan business blog, veganbusinessmedia.com, host of Vegan Business Talk podcast, and author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business, the first global book providing success strategies for aspiring and existing vegan business owners, and founder of the Plant-Powered Women's Network Global Ethical Leadership Community.
Oh, can I pause you there? Sorry, that must be an old bio. It's actually now called the Vegan Women's Leadership Network.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there was a trademark issue, so I changed the name. It's called the Vegan Women's Leadership Network. Sorry about that. I thought I'd updated the bios. I'll have to do
the
that.
latter first, or anyway, better. So well done. Okay. She has, she's written extensively for niche and mainstream media for 18 years on animal advocacy, ethical business, and was a regular Forbes contributor for years, specializing in writing about vegan and plant-based businesses. A vegan of 22 years, Katrina teaches vegan business owners how to do their own PR and get free media coverage through their signature through her signature online courses and group coaching program, Vegans in the Limelight. A passionate animal advocate, Katrina won the Voiceless, the Animal Protection Institute Media Prize for her article, Specialising, The Final Frontier, for Australian national broadcaster, the ABC's The Drum website. Her work has been featured in the books Circles of Compassion, Essays Connecting Issues of Justice, edited by Will Tuttle, and plant-powered women, pioneering female vegan leaders share their vision for a healthier, greener, more compassionate world, edited by Kathy Devine. She lives with her wife, Tracy, and loves glitter and internet cat videos. As I said before, you can find her on www.katrinafox.com and veganbusinessmedia.com. So Katrina, before we kind of climb into all of the endeavors that you're currently involved with, as well as a book that I know came out in, I think, 2015, I was hoping you could draw us a landscape of where you kind of came from regarding your academic and professional life and your personal vegan story as it brought you into what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I've always had an affinity with animals, and I actually went vegetarian at the age of 11, although I didn't know the word. I asked my mum what the beef burger was made of that we would eat, and when she told me it was a cow, I was absolutely horrified, and I made the connection between the roast chicken on Sunday and the fish fingers, and so I just said, I'm not eating animals anymore. So that didn't go down very well, because I was brought up in quite a sort of working class family just outside of South London, in the UK, where I'm originally from. But, you know, I stuck to my guns. It took me a while to get to veganism. It took me till about 1997, 96, 97, to learn about the dairy industry and the cruelty involved in all of that. But once the penny dropped, then, you know, I was all in. And, you know, I've been involved in animal rights activism as well as other social justice issues. In terms of professional career, for the first sort of part of my early sort of adult life, I basically was involved in performing arts. So my original degree is in performing arts, and then around the around about the similar time that I went vegan, actually, I retrained as a journalist, and so I've worked on both mainstream, niche, and specialist trade media throughout my career. Freelanced and written op-eds on animal advocacy and other topics for mainstream media, and as you mentioned, I had a column in Forbes for a year writing about vegan and plant-based business. So around about 2015, when I wrote the book, was really when I tried to meld my, my passion with my profession. And so I wrote the book because there was nothing else on the market specifically for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. And I interviewed over 60 vegan entrepreneurs and weaved their insights throughout the book, which is a how-to guide on how to start and run a business of any kind and run it on vegan principles. Then I decided to start a podcast because I love interviewing people. And once I'd finished the book, I was like, oh, I've finished my interviews. I want to carry on interviewing people. So that's why I launched the podcast and then the blog. So I didn't really, to be perfectly honest, I didn't really have a business plan per se. I just was drawn to doing these things. And I thought, well, I'll just kind of put them out there and I'll work it out as I go along. I'm not necessarily recommending that as a strategy, although I do know other vegan business owners who have done something similar with different businesses. But that's just the journey that I went on. And then I created the course because I realized people needed to know how to get into the media and do PR. Not everyone's got a budget to hire a publicist or a PR firm. So that's when I created the online course. And now I do consulting and coaching and just working with my ideal clients, which I love, which are vegan business owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you have this kind of gateway as a young child into the vegetarian life, you know, through compassion and animals. Do you think it was the same kind of moment of compassion and animals that led you on your vegan journey, or was there a distinct difference between that and how it impacted? Because you have this unique view of, you know, being able to approach it from a business standpoint too. And there's obvious relationships and correlations about sustainability that tie into good business measures and things like that. But what was the turn from you into switching from vegetarian to veganism, or was it kind of a natural progression?
Oh, I only wish I would, if I'd have known then what I knew about the dairy industry back when I was a child, 11, I would have stopped eating dairy and stopped wearing and all of it. So it was definitely I've definitely come from, I know some people, and I know you're going to talk about terminology in a little bit, but see, for me, veganism is about doing the least harm as is practically possible. You know, in terms of not abusing or exploiting or commodifying animals. And that's a paraphrase of the UK Vegan Society's definition back in, I think it was around 1945. So that's basically, I aspire to veganism as a philosophy, as a way of living, of doing the least possible harm. So eliminating animal products as much as you practically can from your life. So I'd been involved in the feminist movement when I was at college, at uni. And when I was on an animal rights demonstration demonstration actually about vivisection, about kittens being bred for vivisection in the UK, and a lovely school teacher was on the coach or the bus taking us up to this demo in Oxford, and I pulled out my sandwich. I said, "Oh, would you like a Vegemite and cheese sandwich?" And she said, "Oh no, I'm vegan, I don't eat cheese." And I said, "Oh, it's vegetarian cheese, there's no animal rennet in it." And then she explained to me about the dairy industry and about all these myths of happy cows and what actually happens to cows, you know, the female reproductive system being hijacked and forced, you know, forcibly inseminated, babies taken away from them. And I was just shocked, and I was extra shocked because as a feminist, that really, you know, as someone who obviously believes in, you know, women having their own body autonomy, I was just horrified and shocked. And I thought, how did I not know this? How did I miss this? You know, because I'd been involved in and around sort of animal rights for a little while back in the late 80s, but I don't know, somehow missed the vegan memo then. So it was very much an ethical decision for me. And once I knew, I was one of those people that pretty much went vegan straight away. I mean, obviously there were some things that needed to be phased out gradually, but quite quickly. And I was obviously privileged enough to do that in terms of shoes, you know, switching out the leather shoes. But food wise, it was pretty much, I got home and I said to my wife, Tracy, right, I said, we're now vegan. I said, well, I'm vegan. I said, if you want cheese, you'll have to buy it yourself, because I was responsible for doing the food shopping. We kind of went from there. And I can tell you, and it was 24 years ago now, I think I went vegan. And back then it was quite tricky, especially in terms of the cheese. They were tasted like rubber back then. So it's been pretty exciting seeing the developments that were going on. Yeah, but very much an ethical decision for me.
Yeah, and I, your fellow countrymate Bhavani and I spoke some number of months ago about cheese. Actually, I think I went off on a tear. Just vegan cheese has been one of those things that, at least in my humble vegan tenure of under a decade, the Greeks, God bless the Greeks, because they were the first people that got, you know, vegan cheese right for me. And I think it was their perception of olive oil and things like that. But it's over the past 5 years, it's the change of vegan cheese has been astronomically important to my life.
Yeah. So it's so brilliant, isn't it? It's like, and we recently now in Australia, like Pizza Hut and Domino's have got pizzas with the vegan cheese on, and it's just so nice. So I deliberately have one, you know, like at least a couple of months, just because I can, like, after 24 years, I can finally have pizza with cheese on again. So yeah, and it's just amazing, all the brilliant products that are coming out that are, you know, just so realistic, full of flavor, and just, yeah, it's game changing.
Speaking of products, this is a good gateway into kind of defining some terms. And I'd like to kind of jump right into the hottest one, which is, how do you differentiate between vegan and plant-based? What does each term mean independently to you, and how do you define them?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wrote a whole article for Forbes on that, because it is such a, I guess, a hot potato. So vegan has always, I think vegan up until now, up until it became, I guess, started to become more mainstream, or the mainstream started to accept it a little bit more. It became a little bit more, you know, quote, trendy. It typically always meant, you know, the ethical side of things, that you were someone who, you know, who didn't eat or consume or wear, you know, any products that involved any kind of use of animals or animal ingredients, etc. Then when it started to kind of take off, people started to describe themselves as vegan, whereas actually they were plant-based. So the difference really for me in terms of plant-based, plant-based is when you eat, it's very much based on food, because you don't really think about plant-based shoes, for example, or plant-based fashion, but it's typically what you eat, and it's kind of about you. It's like, you know, typically people will go plant-based for health, for example, or perhaps for the planet. Some people might go plant-based for the animals, but typically it tends to be, you know, for your own reasons, and it's very centered around food. So someone could be eating plant-based but still wear leather, so that could kind of give a little bit of a differentiation. Now, unfortunately, what's happened is some companies are using the term plant-based to say, oh, it's mainly plants. And that's really frustrating, because, you know, for most of us, plant-based simply meant that you don't eat any kind of animal product. Right. But now they're trying to kind of twist plant-based a little, which is why I love the word vegan, because, you know, it literally kind of means, you know, you don't eat I mean, sometimes people are using the term vegan when they mean plant-based, so there can be a little bit of a mix-up. But for me, vegan, is someone who lives by the philosophy of veganism. So, you eliminate animal use, ingredients, products, etc., from all areas of your life, whereas plant-based is more about eating food. And then, of course, there's whole food plant-based, which is people who they don't have oil or gluten or a whole bunch of other stuff. But to me, that's quite different to veganism.
And how do you define foods? I always say it's anything. I feel like my Whole Foods brothers and sisters are the ones that talk about whether or not it's hit a factory. I'm like, the Whole Foods people, if it's been industrialized, are more than likely going to kind of shun it. Anything that had to be extracted or
processed. Yeah.
That's kind of, are there other terms or other ways that you clarify Whole Foods?
Not really. I mean, I see a whole mix actually of, even on the whole food plant-based, like I subscribe to a plant-based meal delivery service, and some of the products that they describe as whole food plant-based, some of them got like some white rice or some basmati rice in, and I get a bit confused about that, because I thought only brown rice is, non-pro. So I think, again, there tends to be different definitions, but I guess at one end of the stream around that is, like I say, no salt, no sugar, no oil, no gluten. For me, that's quite restrictive, and I don't really, whatever people want to do, as long as you're not eating animals, I don't care. But, I will not post photos of my salad or my fruit shake, because people know that. And I kind of want to get people over the stereotypes of what eating vegan particularly is. So I will post my pizza with its melty vegan cheese. I will post my cheeseburger from all vegan, burger joint, because then people can kind of go, oh, I can go vegan. I can still eat burger, I can still have pizza, I can still have a vegan steak, I can have all of these kind of things. Beyond Meat have just got their new TV commercial out, which is brilliant, and I love it. And the burger that they've got, it just looks like a regular burger, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness, finally. It's not some little lentil pate that we've had since, the whenever, 70s and 80s. So yeah, I will typically, or I'll post chocolate, or cakes, like naughty stuff. And it's not all I eat. I actually do eat really healthily. If you looked at my social media feed, you would think I only eat junk food, but I don't. But I post that because I want people to know that, they don't have to go from having their steak and chips to only eating salads and lentils. You know what I mean? They can still have their favorite foods. Yeah. And arguably, no one's trying to claim that, these kind of things are necessarily healthy, but I would still argue they're healthier than having the animal products, the animal-based counterparts anyway.
And the founder of Impossible Burger did come out and say exactly that, that while it might be processed, it's definitely leaps and bounds ahead of the actual alternative. I'm wondering, your industry, you help clients kind of define themselves, and in addition to, finding resources and getting good PR out and things like that. But it seems like you would do some advising work about really capturing or meditating on what, one's product is and things like that. And you've mentioned this kind of, it seems to be industry-based as well as kind of just individual company-based, but whether or not people identify with the words plant-based or vegan. Some people believe that vegan is powerful and helpful. Others believe that it's exclusionary and it's this kind of politicized term. It seems like I've spoken with a lot of vegan clothing designers and handbag designers, and they're very attached to the term vegan leather, because they said plant-based leather doesn't actually make a lot of sense, which is funny because their leather is it's pineapple, the apple leather. Yeah. But they specifically say vegan leather, usually to get away from PU, the polyurethane that isn't sustainable and environmentally friendly. And I'm wondering, when you go to advise your clients, this role where you kind of help them qualify and quantify, and you begin the PR process with them, is this a conversation you're frequently having? And is it industry based, or is it very company by company based as to what term you help them identify with and use?
Yeah, I've got a whole chapter about it in my book as well as writing the article on Forbes where I expanded on it somewhat. And it really does depend on the business. I always say, and I ask people that question on my own podcast, Vegan Business Talk, why they choose to use the term vegan or plant-based or otherwise, and why. And there's no wrong or right answer. It really depends on the company. It's not industry-wide, because, for example, you've got Miyoko Shina, who uses vegan loud and proud. She's got a vegan tattoo on her arm. She uses all of their branding and marketing. The packaging has got vegan up front because she wants to demystify the word vegan and have it be associated with lovely things. In her case, amazing cheese and vegan butter. And then there are others like Beyond Meat and other brands that specifically don't use vegan, or they might have it in tiny letters. And that's an option, I think, particularly for products that are packaged. You can have the word vegan in very small letters at the back for people like me who want to know it's vegan, who will look for it. But then you can have plant-based, as the one of the key descriptors. So it really does depend on a couple of things, who your market is. So for example, my wife Tracy's a clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, doesn't have the word vegan on her website anywhere. She has sheep and cattle farmers come to see her, and depending on what they're coming to see her for, she's also a naturopath, she's got quite a few of them onto a vegan and plant-based diet. So it does depend on who your target market is, in terms of what word you use, and also as a founder what your mission is and what you're comfortable with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like it would be case by case. It's weird though, as that's changing, I feel like there's going to be even a third term proposed. I think plant-based with vegans now, most of the at least the passionate vegans that I know, they don't like the term plant-based because at least in the United States, it's become very akin to fortified. In the 90s and the 80s, all of these fortified cereals and things where they were stripping it of its real content and then just shoving vitamins and minerals back in there. And the same thing with plant-based. You flip over a package and it's not vegan at all. They've infused it with some kind of a plant-based material. And so
yes, that's what I meant when I said earlier about the term plant-based is, it's starting to become twisted and hijacked. So yeah. And there could well be, I mean, we're seeing a little bit of, not necessarily with food, but plant-powered. There's the whole free from movement. So sometimes, we've seen animal free. But yeah, we'll see what happens in terms of terminology. But I guess for me personally, like for my own business, obviously I love the word vegan because it's kind of in everything that I do, but everybody's different. And look, at the end of the day, if it gets people to stop consuming animals, use whatever term you like.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Yeah, the humane washing and greenwashing effect that has been kind of come up and labeled by, I don't know if it's Gen Z or the millennials, but I love looking at the sociology behind all of those terms. So I want to turn now to unpacking the kind of the three cores of what you do. So I first want to unpack you've gotten into the book a little bit, but I was hoping as an author, when you were writing it, I find coming from a family of authors that there's two scores, at least in my lineage, and there's ones that couldn't possibly stand to think about the audience because they would never publish, and then there are ones that keep the audience in mind the whole way through. And I was wondering if you were keeping your audience in mind when you wrote it, and if so, if you can pull out 5 or 6 of the main core tenets that you really hoped a take home would be.
Sure. Well, I definitely have my audience in mind. So for this particular book, so it's my first book on my own that I did. I have co-authored and I've also co-edited a couple of anthologies in a completely different field. So I've been published by mainstream media, by mainstream publishers, traditional publishers in the past. For this particular one, I basically, because I wanted to move into this field, I'd started hanging around with entrepreneurs, who were asking me, oh, how do I get PR? How do I get into the media? And then I thought, oh, the people I really want to help are vegan entrepreneurs. And I thought, oh, there must be a book about that. And there wasn't. So I thought, right, I guess that's a sign from the universe that I need to write it. So because it was a very practical book, I very much had my audience in mind. So my audience was mainly aspiring vegan business owners and entrepreneurs, but I also wanted to have enough in there for existing vegan business owners and entrepreneurs as well. So for those who haven't yet set up a business, it's got all the stuff about how to set up the structure, what your why is, staff, and then there's also marketing, PR and branding, which is helpful for anyone who's starting out, but also a lot of the existing vegan entrepreneurs have found those particular chapters quite helpful. And also I weaved in, as I did over 60 interviews with vegan entrepreneurs in all different sectors from across the globe, and I weaved some of their insights throughout the book. So I very much had my audience in mind, and the aim really was to, I guess, one was to inspire more people to start a vegan run business, because basically I think I said in the beginning, in the intro, my mission with this book is vegan world domination, one business at a time, because I think as an animal activist, which I do consider myself, I think it's so important. We've got to have vegan products easily and accessible, both financially and physically, so people can get these products. We've got to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to buy their vegan makeup, skincare, fashion, food, etc. So that was one of the key things that I wanted, was to inspire people, to give them ideas. So that's why I interviewed quite a few of the vegan entrepreneurs, because some people were saying to me, oh, I want to start a vegan business, but I'm not sure what kind. So that kind of gives them some ideas. And then basically the book is really kind of a step-by-step guide for people to get going and to at least avoid some of the pitfalls. I think as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, of course, you're always going to make some mistakes, but I think when you equip yourself, with as much information as possible, you can at least avoid some of the key pitfalls to go ahead and start a business and run it on vegan principles.
Yeah. Was your advice applicable to people with products or products and services?
All products. And so I wanted it to be very universal. So whether you were making products in any sector, any kind of product, not just food, and also, for people who are offering services as well. So there's quite a range of interviews with a mix, as I say, mix of entrepreneurs from all different sectors, service providers, product makers, etc.
Did the book give birth to the online course, or coincide, or was it how did that all play out timeline wise?
Yes, I think I sort of touched on earlier, I really didn't have a plan, to be honest. Sometimes you just get a gut feeling that you've got to do something, and I just knew that I had to do the book, and I gave myself a deadline of a year from conception to publication. So that was a really full-on year. And once the book was out, I think I did put like a thing at the back of it, like, you can contact me for a consult, but I hadn't really built the business around it. And so the podcast came next. And then the website came, and I started producing, some extra content, some blog posts. I took some extracts from the book and turned them into blog posts to kind of put them out there. And then I thought, right now I'll add an online course in there. So that's the kind of the timeline. So it kind of, I guess, really stemmed with the book, then the podcast, the consulting and the coaching, which I've added. Some of the coaching packages I've actually added quite recently, but I've been doing the consulting, and I've done some done for you PR services as well.
So do you still?
So it's kind of happened organically in a way.
Like it, but it sounds like it's working too. So that's good. Do you one consulting? Do you still take clients on a one-on-one, or is it turned mainly?
Yeah, I do. So basically, if somebody, there's a lot of free information on the website, on the blog, and in the podcast as well. People say they get it's basically, the podcast is a free training tool, really, because, entrepreneurs that I interview are very generous in sharing their challenges and their strategies for success. So there is a lot of free information there. But if someone wants some tailored one-on-one advice, on an as and when basis, so there's no long-term commitment, they can just book like a one-off hourly consult with me. We do that by Zoom video, and then I will take on a limited amount of one-on-one coaching clients if it's a fit, because that's obviously a lot more intensive. Where I'm working with them, I might be looking at their copy, giving them strategy and tips and advice, and we get on regular calls and stuff. Or I may introduce them to some of my connections, or try to get them. I don't really do the done for you PR in terms of the coaching services, but I've recently got, for example, one of my clients, a regular column on Veg Economist, because she's a specialist in a particular field. So, so that's kind of what I do at the moment. And then there's the online course, and plus my new project, the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, is something I'm doing as well, which is a global membership-based ethical leadership community for vegan women to help them become leaders. So we have live webinar trainings just for members, for premium members, for that. So. I keep busy.
It sounds like it. What about female identified or non-binary individuals? Can they join the Vegans Women's
Of
Leadership Network?
course, basically, yeah, anyone who supports it can join. It's very inclusive.
Nice.
My partner's involved in trans activism. She's a trans woman, so I'm very, very inclusive. And I've written, that's the other area that I've published in and written about. I wrote for the gay press, and I was one of the first, I think, journalists in Australia to write about non-binary people and sex and gender diverse people. So yeah, it's a very inclusive network.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I can't wait to look into it further. And I like I said, I like the new name even better. Getting into Vegan Business Talk, your podcast. So when you, I like to talk to other podcast hosts. I think it's fantastic because in the States in particular, but I find globally still, I consume podcasts, voracious weight. But I think that it's still the Wild West. It's still very, it's anything goes, anytime, any subject, any format. People can start off very formal and within a season become very informal. It kind of spans the gamut. Do you have a structure to yours? How do you curate it? How many times a week or a month did you release it? And when you started out, did you have any of those things figured out?
Yeah, it's evolved a bit over the years, I will say. I mean, I started it, I think it was about 2016. So it was early 2016, I think. And the book was published late 2015. So there's a few months in between. I think initially I kind of went, right, I'm going to do this. And I think I kind of, was doing it weekly. As time has gone on, I'd shifted it to fortnightly, which I know Americans don't always know what a fortnight is, apparently. So it's every 2 weeks. I didn't know that wasn't a term in America. And then sometimes it's gone on, like I know some podcast hosts have seasons, and I think that in a way that's quite clever. Like you do a season and then you have a pause. But I've kind of gone all the way through, but I've kind of had a couple of hiatuses. Like I had one recently when I was launching the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, and now I've come back to it. So I'm aiming to put out show every couple of weeks. In terms of the structure, I'm actually changing that a little bit as well. Previously, I would pre-record the bio on my own, and after I'd done the interview, and have the bullet points, and then I would also have some news at the end. But from going forward, actually from the next interview that I'm doing, which is very shortly, I'm changing that slightly. I'm going to do something similar to what you're doing, where I actually introduce the guest on the show itself, and I'm missing out the news because there's so many. Back when I started the podcast, there wasn't a lot of vegan business news outlets particularly, and now there's like a plethora of the mainstream media are covering a lot of vegan business news. So I'm missing that bit out, and that's going to actually be less work for me to do. And the real value, I think, is in the interviews. People typically say they can kind of get the news anywhere, but the real value is in the interviews. So basically my criteria is that businesses ideally will have been running for about 3 years. And the reason for that is because this particular podcast is giving other vegan entrepreneurs insights into your challenges and success strategies. I don't typically interview startups unless they've been in business run their own business in other areas. And the reason for that is I think it can be, quote, easy to start a business, but maintaining it over a period of time is a lot more challenging. And I think you've just got more to give and more to share when you've been running your business for a little while. So that's my key criteria. But other than that, as long as the whole brand is vegan, completely vegan, and you've been running it for, around about 3 years, I will typically interview vegan entrepreneurs in all sectors, service providers, product makers. I'll sometimes have specialists on as well, like specialist marketing or SEO, etc., people on to share. I will always try and source those first from the vegan community. But I think I had one woman on who wasn't a vegan, but she was like a really mega food scientist that I had on about 3 years ago. So I will occasionally have non-vegan guests on if they have, if I can't find their expertise anywhere else and I feel that they've got a lot of value that vegan business owners can use. So yeah, that's my structure at the moment. As I say, I'm just kind of shifting it a little bit going forward.
And is your audience, is it intended for vegan business owners themselves or for everybody to educate?
It's mainly for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs, both aspiring and existing. Sometimes I've interviewed quite a few investors, how to get funding. It's a very practical podcast. Like we really kind of focus on, what were their challenges when they started out? What are the challenges now? How are they handling them? What marketing strategies are they using? How is it funded? If they got investment, how did they get investment? It's very practical. It's literally like, they're almost like little mini training courses almost, but they're done in kind of interview format. So it is very practical. So I'm not sure that anyone who's, I mean, look, if someone's got an inkling or, you know, perhaps in the back of their mind and they're nowhere near getting started yet, but they know that maybe one day they would like to start a vegan business and run a business and run it on vegan principles, they might tune in. But otherwise, it really is for, aspiring and existing vegan business owners.
Nice. Absolutely. All right. I want to quickly unpack the Vegan Women's Leadership Network. You've just kind of, it sounds like, you know, you've just kind of built, launched, renamed it, rebranded maybe. Can tell us what it is. What is the network for? I mean, you've clarified that it services everybody who wants to be included, but what does it do? What is the network about? Does it meet? What's its functionality? All of that.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I pre-launched it in the middle of the pandemic. So pretty much during lockdown, I'd been working with a business coach, and because I knew I wanted to do something else in addition to vegan business media. And so we came kind of full circle. As I say, I've been involved in the women's movement and feminist movement. So we kind of came up with this idea, and it was going to be a physical event in London, actually. That was the original plan. But then obviously COVID-19 happened. And so I thought, right, I'm going to pre-launch it. I'm going to see if I knew it had to be sustainable, because in the past I've launched projects out of pure passion, but they haven't been sustainable, and I end up getting burnt out, and then, you know, the things come to an end. So I knew that this had to be sustainable. So it's a membership-based global ethical leadership community for vegan women, and it's to provide them with resources to help them become leaders in their field, whatever that looks like for them. So it's for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs, but it's also for people who work in the corporate sector, work in a job, work in entertainment, sport, any sector, work for NGOs. And what we provide, so I put it out there, I put the pre-launch out there just to see if it was sustainable. I thought, if I get a certain amount of women by this date, then I'll go ahead with it and get, you know, the website and the membership site built. And I got the numbers. I was pleasantly surprised, even during lockdown, you know, when people were losing their jobs left, right and center, I was still able to attract you know, a number of women who said, yes, this is so needed. This is the perfect time to be launching this. So got the front end website and the membership portal built. And essentially what we have at the moment, we have regular virtual meetups via Zoom. And that's proved to be really popular because the women are really getting to know one another, and there's collaborations happening left, right and center. People are really supporting one another. And then we've got live webinar trainings on a number of topics around kind of leadership, self-leadership, quite broad there. And we've got, the front-facing website. We have got something else coming up, which I can't say quite at the moment, but that's going to be, I think, quite exciting. And and we're also working with VegFest UK. We've partnered with them to elevate vegan women's voices. So providing, you know, vegan women with opportunities to present and to speak. And I'm hosting a couple of panels with vegan women. One's on vegan women in business. One's on how to find your voice as a leader in the vegan and animal advocacy movement. So it's really about supporting vegan women, elevating them, providing them with resources and connecting with them so that they can collaborate.
That sounds exciting, and it's just in its infancy. That sounds like
yeah.
Will you, after there is a cure, will you go back to opening up to a physical event, or do you think you'll keep it virtual just because this is the space you're in now?
Well, it's an interesting one because I mean, I do like virtual because it's literally like this community is very global. Yes, the majority of women at the moment are from the US, but then there's plenty of women from the UK, all different countries in Europe, Asia Pacific, you know, women are joining. So I like the fact the virtual obviously is good because it's easy in some ways. You just kind of get on your computer and get women together, but I'm certainly not ruling anything out. I mean, I do love to go back to my hometown of London. I love to go to New York. So I'm certainly not ruling out some kind of physical event, either a standalone event or being part of a bigger show, because, it is nice to just kind of hang out with people and physically meet them. So I think down the track when we, I'm not sure when that will be, but I think we will do some kind of physical events as well. Yeah.
Exciting. All right. Well, we're almost running out of time, Katrina, which is too bad because I have a million questions, but I want to get to rapid fire questions, and I neglected to tell everyone in the roadmap. But we have a lot of you writing in and asking us questions, and we have a team of people that have put them together in different categories. And so we've combined a lot, but I'm going to just get a few that people who write in who want us to ask people of your expertise in specific about the vegan world. And one of the first ones is, what is the number one mistake you see most vegan businesses making? And I think this was we had a bunch of questions about ones that have products. So products across the board, but what do you feel like one of the number one PR mistakes that vegan businesses that you run into make?
Not putting aside a budget for marketing and PR. I see a lot of vegan businesses putting a lot of time and effort into their product, which of course you need to do. You want to get a good quality, if it is a product out there or if it's a service, you want to make sure you're giving value to your clients, whatever you do. But a lot of them, I'd say a second mistake would be underestimating budget required. I think you always need to at least triple what you plan to spend, whether that's, for machinery, equipment, etc. But put some kind of budget aside for marketing and PR. Yes, you can do a lot organically, of course, and everyone jumps on social media and what have you, and that can be good. But I think it's always good to have some kind of budget, whether you use that for paid ads or for PR or for some kind of digital marketing. I think that's really important, because you can have the best product and the best service in the world, but if no one knows about it, then you haven't got a business.
Okay. And along those same lines, we've had a lot of people write in and say, what is the number one thing that a small vegan business can do on their own to really help their bottom line with PR? Like some technique or a tool or posting or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I think learn how to do your own PR, so that you can actually pitch yourself to media. Certainly, yes, you can hire a publicist or a PR firm if you've got that kind of budget, which is several $1,000 a month. A lot of small businesses don't have that. So learn the tools and techniques and tips. You can get that information for free on the internet. Obviously, little plug, you can do my course, but you can find that information out on how to pitch to the media and get into, find out what target media is best for you and how to approach journalists, because that can really help, I think, getting media coverage. And of course, having a presence on social media. Make sure you're where your audience is and show the behind the scenes stuff, and tell your story, so you're not just kind of every post is buy this, buy this, buy this, but showing people who you are. Brand storytelling, I think, is really important. Nowadays, as a founder, you can no longer afford to hide behind your business. You're no longer the faceless founder. You need to be there front and center, let people know who you are. And remember, not everyone will love you or your product, and that's okay. You're not trying to serve everyone. Nobody can serve everyone. You're trying to attract to you the people who feel passionate about you and your brand and will want to support you.
Right. And I will say, to kind of further that plug, that I did appreciate you had a tight 3 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes on YouTube, kind of explaining vegan business media, like the course and what it
Vegans in the Limelight. Yeah.
Vegans in the Limelight, and what the course was about, and a quick synopsis that really imparted a great deal of information. I felt like what you were going to give your people, including interface, and how there's question and format, but it's this more loose for the calendar online and things like that. I think it did a good job of answering that for anyone who's thinking about it. You can jump on. Thanks. YouTube's great. Absolutely. We had a lot of people write in asking if, a lot going along the same line, social media, this kind of delineation between founder and business. I don't think the younger generations think that needs to, or could exist anymore either, which I agree with you. I don't think it can or would. A lot of people wonder if they should be linking up their business and their personal accounts. This kind of communication between the two. People talked about, linking one to the other or probably closing one down. There was a lot of questions as to what you would advise on that level, because it's a vegan business and they've been a vegan individual.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And again, I think it comes back to the terminology question that you asked, and it's going to be different for everyone. So for example, I do know people who have got their own personal, like they have a personal Facebook account and they've just got a handful of literal family and friends, like people that they know, and that's just for sharing their personal stuff. And then they've got their business page, which is totally separate, and that can work for them. But then like someone like me, I've got my personal Facebook, everything I post is public, and I've also got my various pages. And I think when you're, I guess, a personality, for example, then I think what you can't assume that people won't find out what you've posted on your personal. So for example, if say you were running a vegan brand and then you posted I don't know, at the weekend or a plant-based brand, should I say, and then the weekend you post a picture, you've been trophy hunting, whatever, on your personal Facebook, that's obviously going to be, you know, a complete mismatch. And just because it's on there, like someone may still see it and screen grab it. Same if you're going into groups, for example, say you're hanging out in vegan groups on Facebook, for example, as your personal account, then, you know, people will screen grab, you know, even if it's a so-called private group. So I think you need to be wary of, or be aware of what you put on your personal social media. Don't assume that what you put on your personal stuff won't somehow be connected with your business, because it can be. So just be wary. But having said that, I do think it's nice for people, like if you are, you know, willing to put yourself out there, it can be nice for people to say, oh look, here's, you know, so and so and their family and their cat or their dog, what have you. But just be aware of that. And my rule of thumb is don't post anything in public, whether on social, on your website, that you wouldn't be happy for anyone to see in 5 years and 10 years time. Like I am so glad social media didn't exist when I was in my 20s, for example. So that's my kind of rule of thumb, you know, be comfortable with what you're sharing, but be aware that, you know, it could be connected with your business.
Yeah. And finally, we had a lot of people write in, and I have my own personal take on this. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. We have a lot of people talking about sponsorship, and I'm assuming they also mean partnership, but regarding their brands and this kind of, you know, uniting to be a stronger voice together. There were a lot of people asking for your personal business advice in regards to reaching out for a sponsorship or partnership with a young vegan business.
Okay. So there's sponsorship or investment. I'm not sure whether I'm not quite sure what they mean about sponsoring, because typically a vegan business would sponsor like a non-profit, for example. So I don't know if they mean kind of financial help or investment or fundraising.
There's a lot of advice in the States right now, kind of casually whispered, I would say, through the grapevines. And I'm not sure I can hear a voice that's actually saying it, but this idea of becoming a partner or a sponsor, there are new platforms. In fact, there's new startups where, you know, they're joining people together, particularly in women and women identified businesses and things like that, and kind of bringing two disparate groups together to have a greater reach, if you will. So they'll, you know, there are these companies that are matchmaking, like cosmetics, with a new Levi's, you know, company, and bringing them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
And
Okay.
people that are now hearing that and writing and going, what does it all mean? Like, should I be doing this? Do I need to reach out for sponsorship? And we've had a lot of people ask, you know, what's the terminology around an ask like that? So if you had a client saying, listen, I want to reach out to partner or ask someone to sponsor me, or let's just say partner up with somebody to increase your reach, how would you advise they go about that?
Yeah, I think you've always got to look at what is in it for them, not just what's in it for you. A lot of the times I find with small business owners, and I find this particularly around PR as well, is like, they're like, oh, well, I want free publicity for my products and services. That's not a journalist's job. And the same with a partnership. If you're going to go to someone and say, right, I would like this, I would like us to partner because I want this, this, and this, you've got to say, well, what's in it for them? And that's particularly if you're then approaching someone who's already got, you know, a big platform and has already got a big market. You know, why should they help you? Like, what's going to be in it for them? So I think that's a really important thing. Like, what can you offer them? Why will this partnership be a positive thing for both? So I think that's my advice, particularly with a larger company. So, you know, if you were looking to partner with a larger company, and they perhaps haven't got into plant-based, or they're just kind of dipping their toe in it, you know, you can kind of go in there and say, look, our product is innovative, you know, this is what we know about the plant-based sector, and this is how I feel it could work, this partnership could work for both of us. When I wrote the book, I've got a whole chapter on collaboration, because what we're seeing, certainly with vegan business owners and entrepreneurs, is they've been collaborating for years and continue to do so. So, for example, there were about 3 vegan shoe brands that all decided to share a stall or a booth at a particular trade show or event. So they pooled their resources. Technically, they're all in competition. You know, they're all vegan shoemakers, but obviously they had their different, you know, different products, slightly different, but they were technically all in competition. But they pooled their resources, bought this booth, and then they each staffed it at different times and promoted everybody's brands. Sometimes you might get a vegan cheese partnering with a vegan, you know, some kind of cracker company to do a promotion. We've certainly seen a lot of that in lockdown, actually. And I think Bhavani, who you've mentioned from the Green Lion, which is a vegan eatery here, has done that as well, and as well as a vegan chocolate brand here. So they partnered with another company, I can't remember what they were, but it was like a savoury and a sweet. So people could go and collect, they could order and then go and collect their savoury and their chocolate treat together. So that can work to be, it's all about the mutual benefit. I think that's really important. So definitely focus on what's in it for them, rather than, I've got this great product, I need money, I need marketing, I need support, can you help me? Do you know what I mean? That's not going to fly, because they're going to get lots of people. So always think about what's in it for the other person, the other brand.
I think I think it's true for any good business measure, you know, any business meeting, to kind of look at the other point of view before you go in for the ask. The elevator pitch is really important. And I think we all need to be very concise and very clear about what we're doing, you know, as business owners or anyone kind of walking throughout today's world. But in that kind of gets lost in translation, the concept of like really listening and ascertaining, but prior to meeting with somebody, you know, what they could possibly use you for as well. And then honing that pitch a bit. Okay, our final area of inquiry is kind of looking at the future. And this is, I'm love this question the further we get into this year, because it's changed so much for people on a daily basis. But as far as the vegan industry, particularly with someone like yourself, because you have this bird's eye view of so many different companies that you're helping and advising and speaking to, and all of these different areas and venues that you're involved with. And you and I were talking off the record, a little bit on the record, about how hyperspeed, you know, the vegan industry world seems to be in the past 5 years, 10 years, as opposed to 20 years ago, the 50 before it. I've written in an article saying, you know, for the 50 before the aughts, it wasn't even a microscopic dot as opposed to what's happened in the past 10 years with just IPOs alone, economics, all of that. And with that comes follow suit of culture, all of these things. But for you personally, what do you see it continuing with hyperspeed? Do you disagree with me on that? In the next 5 years, where do you see some of the biggest changes happening within the vegan world? What are some of your predictions? Go to town.
Yeah, cool. I love this. Now, I think I definitely agree with you. I think it's going to continue along with the hyperspeed that you mentioned, because of various reasons: for human health, for sustainability, and also more and more people becoming aware of animal welfare. I think we're seeing the fact that we've got major investors. I mentioned on my website, I've got a whole list of vegan and vegan-friendly investors, and I keep having to add to it. You've got Miyoko, who's got Miyoko Shinner of Miyoko's, who's got investment from Ellen DeGeneres and her wife Portia. You know, we've got big name celebrities, Bill Gates, you know, really kind of big names who are getting on board with this. And then, of course, you've got these big corporate companies who don't necessarily have great ethics in terms of animals, people, or planet, but they're kind of jumping in on this plant-based brand. And they're buying up vegan brands as well. And that can be, you know, obviously there's pros and cons to that, but the pros are that the vegan products then get way more distribution and become way more available, you know, in places like Walmart and, you know, all these, to make them more accessible. So I think we're kind of seeing that happening at the moment. We're kind of seeing these kind of partnerships that will, you know, bedfellows that you wouldn't normally have seen, you know, all those years ago. I think potentially what's going to be happening, and I know there's people working in the space, is that they're creating a vegan economy, so that at some point we won't necessarily have to partner with these big brands, or we will have an impact on how these big companies, corporations operate, like we're almost like force them to be ethical, because consumers will demand that. They're not just going to be demanding cheaper products, but they want to know where the products came from, what the ethics behind the brands are. I think we're going to see more niching. We're already starting to see that. So in terms of, say, vegan Italian, vegan Indian, vegan Mexican, in terms of eateries, I think we're going to get even more and more niche. And I think, and cheeses, I mean, we talked about that earlier, we're just at the cusp now. You know, if you look in the supermarket, how many dairy cheeses there are. So there's a lot of room, I think, in this category to, you know, provide animal-free versions of all the different dairy cheeses. You've got companies like Perfect Day that are making dairy from bacteria. So they're replicating the casein that is in regular dairy, but they're creating it from yeast on bacteria. So I think we're seeing a lot of high tech, 3D. We're seeing 3D printed steaks, for example, vegan steaks. So I think the technology is going to continue, and we're seeing, you know, billionaires, you know, investing in this kind of technology. So I think, yeah, we're going to see more IPOs. I think it's just going to get bigger and better. I think as well, the fashion space is really starting to come into its own, the vegan fashion. Partly as part of the overall sustainable fashion and the move away from, or the push, or the way to move away from fast fashion. Beauty, we're seeing celebrities, when they are launching their beauty products, they might not be vegan themselves, but they are producing their products as vegan by default because it just makes sense. So yeah, I think we're really kind of we're seeing vegan tourism. I know obviously at the moment of this interview we're in, you know, still in COVID-19, but, you know, there's vegan tourism, vegan travel. You know, I think veganism is literally a vegan interior design. That's another growing market as well. You know, what you're using in your home. It's not just about eco-friendly and natural and sustainable. It's also, people want cruelty-free now. So that's another growing market. So I think it's really exciting. I think that veganism is pervading everything, and to create a world where what we buy, what we consume is good for people, good for animals, and good for the planet. And I love that.
I do too. And I completely concur. I love the areas you're getting into too. I'm going to have to bring you back on because it's a huge passion of as a vegan parent, 4 vegan children, and I globetrot yearly, and vegan, I just don't, there's not enough vegan travel blogs for me. I think that there are some, but like people really speaking to, you know, people still mention Happy Cow, and I'm like, there's got to be more. We need more of them, you know? So I think that it's true, and it's burgeoning, and it's growing, and it needs to be kept up to date. And it's an exciting time. And there's so many different industries, like you say. The fashion's a big one for myself as well. You know, the beloved daughter of England, Stella McCartney, is one of my most favorites. And she was one of the first in the major industry, I think, to actually come out and just say it's humane, it's right, and it looks better. It's, you know, all of those things. And I think that once we have more artists and people like that that are coming forward, really married to the ideas, it will just continue to fact track it all. I completely agree with you, and I'm excited to venture into that future with you. That's going to be
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for meeting with us today. I really appreciate it. I know you're incredibly busy, and I appreciate you taking the time and giving us all of your candor and information.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm really great to connect with you and find out more about you. And it's been lovely chatting with you.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, we have been speaking with Katrina Fox. She's a journalist, author, founder, and PR consultant. You can find out more about her, all of her services, her books, her online courses, and her podcast on both of her websites, www.katrinafox.com, as well as www.veganbusinessmedia.com. And until we speak again next time, remember to stay safe, eat clean and responsibly, and always bet on yourself. Sláinte.